Hey there, Bookkeeping Side Hustle Community. Glad to have you here. We are back with our friend Shahram from Financial Sense. It's the
Going.
second, it's the second in the series that we're doing with him, all about just to kind of teaching us a bunch of different stuff about running a firm. And today's topic is going to be all about how to automate your accounting firm and or your bookkeeping firm. And I want to make sure y'all know that there's a playlist below where you can watch the last one where we learned about scaling your firm with optimized checklists. And there was a download that everyone was raving about that you should grab. And there's a download for this one too below, a playbook. Your firm automation playbook is down below. So those are the important links for this. Come back on September 15th for the next one. And we're going to be doing this for a while throughout 2022, about one a month. And we're going to get started. So all about how to automate your accounting firm with Shahram. And I'm going to let you kind of take it away, introduce yourself, and we will take questions live. I'll be watching the chat, so don't be shy, folks. We're here to push him. You know, he's seen a lot of behind the scenes of a lot of, so there's, don't feel shy about asking questions because he can handle it, and if he can't, he'll go find the answer for us. So let's dive in. Shahram, to kind of get us started, give any other intro remarks from you, and then we'll get into the material.
Yeah, definitely. What we can do is we'll just jump straight in. We got a lot of material to cover today, and I'll talk a
All
little bit
right.
about myself through that process.
All right, let me add the screen to the stream here.
Okay. Can you
Turn
see my
off the.
screen?
I can see your screen, and you are ready to rock.
Perfect. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I think this is something a lot of firms struggle with is implementing automation. And there's several reasons why, because it can be complex. And so in this presentation today, we're going to break down the benefits, the challenges, and really how you can overcome that and successfully implement automation in your firm. And most importantly, get your team to adopt that automation and that new process. So a little bit about me, Shahram. As Kate mentioned, I'm the founder, CEO of Financial Sense, and what we do is we offer a very easy to use accounting practice management tool that helps accountants and bookkeepers scale their practice. But before we did all of this, so why do I know so much about the accounting space, right? And why do I have a lot of these great tips that I've picked up over the years? It's because before we started anything, we interviewed hundreds of accounting firms to really understand what were the challenges they faced when really growing their firm, scaling their team, and building something that they could build into a real big business. And through that, we learned about automation, we learned about workflow, we learned about a lot of those challenges. And we're going to talk about that today. So we've been in the market for 2 years. We use those insights to release our product. And now we're one of the fastest growing practice management tools in the market, serving thousands of accountants. So as I mentioned, the agenda, right? We're going to talk about the benefits, the challenges, and our 6-step firm automation playbook that can help you overcome those challenges and implement that automation in your firm. And lastly, some ways FC can help you power that automation in your firm. So first and simple, what is automation? Automation is removing the manual process you have to do to complete work. So we do a lot of manual repetitive processes in our firms. And automation is using technology to take yourself out of the equation so you don't have to do it anymore. And the great thing is accounting firms have a lot of automation opportunity. Accounting bookkeeping firms, they do a lot of the same work over and over again, whether it's payroll, bookkeeping, or different types of things. You do a lot of the same weekly tasks. And also in the accounting space, there's a typical like a code or a standard or a standardized process you have to follow to stay in compliance typically. So such a streamlined process makes it easier to automate. So given the streamlined processes you have to follow as a firm, as well as it being very repetitive, allows you to really benefit from the opportunity of automation as a firm. And that's why it's such a great topic, and it is, and a lot of firms have a lot of success with doing it. So really quickly, what are the benefits, right? Why would you want to implement automation in your firm? First is it can save you a lot of time. We work with a lot of firms, and we know you guys are very busy. You work long hours. You don't have a lot of time to do a lot of important things for your business. implementing automation will save you that time so you can focus on growing your business, hiring more employees, training those employees, and just really getting more work done. It also improves the overall work quality and drives consistent client deliverables. We are all human. We all make mistakes. Even if you do the same process over and over again, thousands of times, it's very easy to forget something, right? It's very easy to
Oh
make a
yeah.
mistake. Um, and the interesting thing is, even if you are perfect, right? This problem amplifies as you grow. At some point, you can't do everything yourself. You have to hire people to support your growing client base. When you bring those less experienced people in, those new hires, they're very prone to making mistakes, which affects your overall work quality. So as your firm scales, it can be very hard to maintain that quality of work and those consistent deliverables. But by implementing automation, you remove that human factor, that human error component, and have it more automated in parts of the process, which helps maintain quality and have quality control over your work. It also increases profitability. So if you think about it, the biggest expense for accounting firms is hiring, training, and paying new employees, right? Going on the process and spending months paying for ads to hire new employees, but also just standard payroll, paying your employees every single month. It costs a lot of money. And that's typically the biggest expense for accounting firms. But if you
Yeah,
can automate, go ahead.
we're knowledge workers, so
Yeah.
it's the time. It's not like we have high cost of goods for a restaurant or a manufacturer. It's us. So the lower we can make our human costs, the better.
Exactly. And that's why you see some firms really achieving some really great profit margins with automation, because if they can free up 50% of their time, right, for them and their employees to take on more work, that means they can take on 50% more work, increase revenue, if you look at it just at a perfect world by 50%, uh, that all falls typically to the bottom line because they're not having to hire. They're keeping that big expense stagnant without while still increasing revenue.
Right.
Uh, so it drives a lot of profitability. And lastly, it helps you scale faster. I think from a lot of the firms we talk to, the biggest bottleneck to growing and scaling your firm and taking on new clients is finding the talent, especially in today's environment. It's really hard to find talent. Um, so what happens if you can't find the talent, right? I talked to a lot of firms, they have to send away new clients, new business because they can't handle it. They don't have the bandwidth for it right now. They're already too overwhelmed. They're already working 80 hours a week. Well, if you can automate a lot of these processes, you can take on more work without having to hire employees. So you can scale and grow the firm. But also, as you do hire more employees, by automating the processes, each employee can take on more work. So you don't have to hire as frequently. You can grow in bigger chunks without having to hire, every 3 to 6 months. So it allows you to really scale faster and not hit that bottleneck as often. So, given the benefits, let's talk about why a lot of firms don't implement automation. The first thing is it can be overwhelming. We talked about how it's great that accounting firms have all this opportunity for automation, right? There's so many different parts of the process they can automate, just given the standardization. There's a lot of repetitive, there could be a lot of value. It's great that there's a lot of opportunity, but also that can also be overwhelming, right? When someone looks at their processes and they see all these opportunities and they get excited, they end up creating a long list. That list can be overwhelming. You try to implement it all at once. You don't have any success. You're too busy to do all of that. So what do? You kick the can down the road a month, a week, a year, and it just sometimes never happens because they just don't have the time. The second one is they do have the time, right? They figure it out. They know what to implement, but then the team doesn't adopt the new process or technology. No one likes change. It can be really hard to get your team to change the way they do things. So even if you know what you need to do and you know what you want to automate and you can kind of prioritize that, they struggle to get their team to adopt it and successfully implement these new processes and technologies.
So, Nye, you didn't know this, but my newsletter that's going to come out on Saturday, the title of this one's going to be "The One Where I Wrestle," and it's this concept of the overwhelm. Like I feel like sometimes I'm wrestling, like in an actual like physical battle with technology
Yeah.
sometimes, and it can be overwhelming. And so, I think the important thing is to remember: is it like a long prone out sort of small battle, or is it like I'm going to get this, we're going to go through some pain to figure this out, I'm going to stretch myself, yes I'm overwhelmed, but I know smart people who are doing, who are running better businesses than me are doing this, so this is what I have to do. And you just kind of have to commit to like expect it to be a challenge, but
Yeah.
that one that you're going to overcome, because we've been overcoming challenges in our business from day one. Like getting your first client is a challenge, so we can do this, y'all.
Yeah.
And you're going to get to read about some of my problems in the last couple of weeks, and a lot of other people chimed in about stuff that they've currently been wrestling with, but we're going to work through it together and push through. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
just some encouragement. Keep going. It's just ringing really true, especially this week with some of the stuff I've been wrestling with.
Yeah, I think no matter how good of a plan you have, it's always going to be challenging, right? And sometimes you just got to rip the band-aid off.
Hmm.
It's not going to be fun sometimes, but I think on the back end, it pays out tenfold and it's worth it. But it's just, yeah, you just got to push through sometimes. It can be challenging. So now let's get into the good stuff, right? The firm automation playbook. And this is something we designed to help implement automation. So involves 6 steps. And also, we have a framework that is in the link. I know Kate mentioned it. I just want to highlight it
Yep.
again. You can download it. It's a distilled down version that you can use with all the frameworks we're going to be talking about to implement automation in your firm. Um, so the first step, right? Identify where you spend time. This is going to allow you to identify the biggest opportunities for automation, where you can get the most value and save the most time. You'll be surprised where you spend your time. 2 is define what can and cannot be automated. Unfortunately, not everything can be automated. There will always be a human component, but you want to be able to define what can. Then, once you know where you're spending your time and what can be automated, you're going to want to identify the technology you need to implement that and the process of how to do that. You're going to prioritize what you can do first because you can't do it all at once, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And then create a roadmap for visibility for your team and accountability. And then most importantly, implement and train your team and the best processes for doing that. So let's get in the first step, right? Identifying where you spend your time. It's very easy to overlook where your time is going. You would be surprised how much time you're spending sending emails, scheduling meetings. All these little things really start to add up. So it's important before you get started not to just make assumptions, but actually spend a week tracking your time, whether it's through a time tracker or just writing it down as you go along in your calendar, how much time you're spending doing certain activities, right? Calls, bookkeeping work, payroll work. So try to group it by activity, right? Chasing down client information, it could be anything. And at the end of the week, you'll take that time and you're going to want to group it and sum it up to get an idea of where your time is going. So it may look something like this. Every firm is different, right? And I mean, most firms, firm owners, they work more than 40 hours a week. So, but this will give you an idea, right? Now I know, okay, I'm spending about 2 hours scheduling calls, 5 hours writing emails to clients, 5 hours collecting client info, 6 hours in meetings, 2 hours invoicing my clients a week, and then payroll and bookkeeping, actually doing the work. I'm only spending about half the time doing that. So once you have this, you can really say, okay, these are some opportunities for automation. This is where my time is going. How can I pull myself out of this process? And this gives you kind of a clear roadmap to identify that. So once you have this, right, then you want to go back and say what can and cannot be automated, because not everything can be automated. What you want to look for are repetitive manual processes where there is a streamlined way of doing things, where there's not a lot of creative thinking, right? So like, what do those things look like? Scheduling calls, right? It's, just a manual process. Writing emails, writing emails does take creative thinking. However, you send a lot of the same emails to all your clients. So you can create templates for those emails, right? For those common emails that you and your team can use. So you don't have to spend 5-10 minutes rewriting the same email every time. Chasing down clients for information. This is a huge one. A lot of firms chase down their clients for the same information every week, every month, for payroll, for bookkeeping. Reminding your team, letting them know, keeping them in the loop on when they can begin their work. Reporting, running reports in Excel. If you run your firm on spreadsheets, creating that same spreadsheet over every month, every week to track work or run specific reports. Month-end reviews, there's tech out there for that. Payroll, payments, collecting those payments from your clients, uncategorized transactions. So there's a lot of these solutions out here that can help you automate these common processes. And these are a lot of processes that firms do automate. So this is a great list to go off of. So if you look at my week, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much everything can be automated or to some degree, except for the client meetings, because in the meetings, they're not going to want to talk to a robot. So once you've identified what can be automated in your typical week, then you're going to want to identify the tech to do so. And I think this is probably the hardest process for a lot of firms. This is where they hit a wall. And it's because of something I like to call shiny object syndrome. They get excited. If you go and Google, we talked about here, scheduling calls, so a calendar or appointment scheduling app. If you Google that, you'll find 20 different options and solutions. And it's really easy. You want to pick the best solution for your firm. So what do? A lot of firms, they go and they do a demo or talk to all 20 companies. That takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I know firms I talk to, they're like, we've been vetting solutions for the last 2 years because they want to make sure they pick the right one. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that process is time consuming. And what that does is that does more harm than good, because you just delay it 2 years down the road when you could have been reaping the benefits of the time saving and increasing profitability and all these benefits that come with automation. So,
And I think especially people who are prone to listen to my channel, we don't have a clue what our business is going to look like in 2 years, people. I mean, we just don't. Probably almost no one does, but especially for people who are on the newer side of entrepreneurship, you don't know what your niche is going to be. You don't know how many clients you want. You don't know what part of the work you're going to love versus not love. And yeah, 2 years, no way. You're going to be, you're going to be, you might be in a completely different business line. You're going to be doing cash flow consulting instead of bookkeeping because you develop something really good, or maybe you become an app head where you're implementing apps for clients. There's so many different ways, forks that I've seen people take anyway. So interviewing 20 and taking 2 years is I think that's revealing of other mental problems that you have about not wanting to do things that you really know that you need to be doing. It's like an excuse or a procrastination.
it is a lot of the time. Yeah, it's hard. It's the nerve of actually pulling the decision, and it's better to make the decision, even if it's sometimes not the best decision, and just get it done. But here's the thing: you can still make the best decision without going through a process like that. So what we tell people to do is lean on your peers, right? Whether it's a Facebook group or someone in the space, there's a really, really good chance that another firm has faced the same issue. They've had this problem and they've already done all that research and they've vetted the apps and they've used it and got a deep understanding. So go to your peers, tell them the challenge you're having, what you're wanting to automate, and ask them what they're using. People use Facebook groups for this a lot. Communities, masterminds. And when you do that, you can skip that whole long research process and all those demos and use that. You still don't have to pick based off that, but at least you can narrow it down to your top 2 or 3.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
And so that's what we tell people. And I think that's the best way to go about it. And so what we've created over the years is what we call the firm automation tech stack. And this is also in that framework. And these are some of the apps that a lot of firms have recommended over the years, that have said, these are what we use for these processes. So you can use this to help jumpstart your process. or you can use this as a starting point and then still go ask your communities. But this is something we've created. Like Acuity's very popular. You can also use Calendly for scheduling calls, writing emails. We use Streak, creating client work, creating that work over and over, like those spreadsheets, right? A recurring practice management tool like Financial Sense, chasing down your clients for information. You don't want to do that every week. Automated reminders for your clients. Capturing receipts, HubDoc, month in review process, auto review. That can be very time consuming for a lot of bookkeeping firms. And there's just a lot of good options in here that you can go through. So just to kind of give you an idea, like if we were to implement this firm automation tech stack into the things that take our time, if you look at my week before and after, you could save, in this example, 16 hours a week, right? 16 hours a week, that's 2 extra full working days. I mean, that's a lot of
Or
time.
days off.
Yeah, or days off, right? You could 3-day work weeks. And like if you look at that over the year though, that's up to 5 months of working time saved. I mean, you could take a vacation, you could focus on taking on more clients, you could focus on growing your business, thinking strategically. It's just kind of that's just there to just paint a picture, right, of how much automation, and if you fully automate all these processes in your firm, how much value it can drive and how much time it could save you. You could have a great work-life balance. I know a lot of some firms that have done this and they work less than 40 hours a week. They don't work Fridays or Thursdays, but they still have a thriving, high-performing firm.
Yeah. So you said that list of some suggested apps was in the playbook that's available for download?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all the things on the list. I guess the only one I haven't heard of is Streak, but very solid lists there, y'all. That speaking of not procrastinating, like if you just ran with that, there are extremely efficient, great businesses running on that stack right there. I mean, like I can put faces with names of people who are using that. So, anyway, gets a good list and get your download.
Yeah, definitely. All these frameworks will be in there for you guys, so you can take all this and use it to kind of start implementing this process. So now that you identified right where you're spending your time, the tech you're going to use, you need to prioritize because, like we talked about, it can be overwhelming. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. You're going to have a lot of options to choose from of what to automate first. But if you try to do it all at once, one, it's just never going to happen because you don't have time to do it all at once. You can't take it all. But if you break it down into bite-sized pieces, it will be a lot easier, not just for you and for time purposes, but also for your team. People can only take in so much at once, and they can only learn so much at once, and a new change the process so much at once. So if you start small and break it down into smaller pieces, it improves the chance that your team's going to adopt it. It's going to be easier for you to learn it, and it's going to help you get that momentum. So when you look at prioritizing, there's 2 things. You want to look at how difficult it is to implement and the amount of time it would save you. So we created this, and this is also in the framework. We call it our automation priority matrix. And you want to look at ease to automate and how much time is saved. So we always say, do the easy things first, right? Because one, implementing a new process is hard. It can be painful, like we talked about, right? You got to rip the Band-Aid off. But if you can get this easier things done first, it helps you build momentum, right? You see that value, especially for your team. Your team sees the value. I mean, you may get excited about automating it because it's your firm, but your team may not be as happy about changing the way they do things. But if you can start small with something that's less disruptive and less disruptive to the way they do things, and they see that value from that little implementation, they're going to be more likely to implement bigger things down the road. They're going to see that value. It's going to give momentum for that. So we always say start small. So in this matrix, what you can see is we have the easy to automate first with the most time saved. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then you want to go to easy to automate with the less time saved. And then third is hard to automate, more time saved. And then lastly, it's hard to automate, but little time saved. So if you follow that framework, it allows you to tackle the easy things and build the momentum for the harder things that are going to be more disruptive and challenging for your team to adopt. So like if we go back to my example, this is how it would look, right? So client data collection saves us 5 hours a week, easy to automate. That's at the top. Then, writing emails. So implementing email templates, scheduling calls. It's pretty easy to implement, but it didn't save us as much time. So it made it into the next quadrant and so forth. So
Okay.
this helps you prioritize and choose what to automate first. And the key thing is you don't move on to the next thing until you fully implement the first thing, right?
Ooh. Ooh.
So
Okay.
you don't want to try to do both client data collection and writing emails at the same time, because if you throw too many things at your team at once, it's going to be a little overwhelming. Things are going to slip through the cracks. They're not going to take in all that information, and it's just going to get ignored. We like to say you fully focus on one thing at a time, implement it, and then move on to the next thing. So lastly, you want to take this and put it in an automation roadmap. We like this because it gives your team visibility. It also gives everyone, including yourself, accountability. So you and your team, you can discuss this with them. You can share, these are the things we're going to be implementing it.
Wow.
These are what we're going to be using. This is our estimated timelines of starting and finishing. So you have that accountability. But most importantly, you assign a champion or an owner, someone to champion these implementations. One person that kind of owns that process. Everyone's going to be involved, but one person to make sure it gets done and just to champion through, because it's not always easy. You want someone to just hold everyone accountable. Just one single person to kind of walk them through the automation roadmap and implementing those roadmaps.
This is fantastic. I mean, that's such a simple way to think about it. And if the answer to the champion is y'all, then that's fine. Like some
Yeah.
of us don't have someone else to put there, but you're going to start with row number 1 and you're going to give yourself a goal for finish dates like that. Even just writing down, I want to have Acuity or Calendly set up by September 1st would so much increase the likelihood of that happening. It's unreal. This is really elegant.
Yeah, I think the firms that we see have had the most success implementing automation is they set a deadline. They're like, okay, like you said, we're going to do this by September 1st, and the whole team is focused on making this one thing happen, right? Because you're doing them one at a time, and they have a lot. It's a little bit of work, but everyone's focused. If there's any questions, they get them answered. It just kind of keeps everyone rowing in the same direction, and
Yeah.
gives everyone a clear vision of like what needs to get done, so there's no questions. So the last and most important step, implementing and training your team. So we talked about first, right? Start small, do one thing at a time. But what we do see a lot of people do is they send an email to their team with, hey, we're going to start implementing this new tech. It's going to help us do this. Here's some training videos. And that's it. That doesn't work, right? Because there's always questions that don't get answered in those videos. Or maybe they're just too busy and they ignore it. So what we recommend doing is getting your team together in a meeting. What we say is do a lunch and learn, right? Buy your whole team lunch, get them in the office, and say, we're going to learn a new process today or technology to help automate our processes.
Mm-hmm.
You get them together so you can collaborate, ask questions, address concerns, and tackle the main issues that they're going to have and get everyone on board, because there's going to be a discussion around it. Also, during these meetings, it's important to really explain how it's going to make their lives easier. Why would they want this change in their process, right? Something that's going to change the way they've been doing things for maybe the last few years. You really want to talk about why it's important to them, how it's going to make their lives easier. And most importantly, just demo the product, right? Not just talk about the new process and how things are going to be different, what's going to be changing, what's not going to be changing, but really demoing the product for them and training them on it. And you don't have to do this yourself. A lot of these software companies like ours, we offer free demos. We offer free training for the teams. So bring in a representative through Zoom to walk through the product. And then as they do that, your team's going to have a lot of questions or concerns. And they're probably the best person to answer them, right? They're going to think about a lot of little things that you didn't think about. And the rep is going to have the most knowledge on the product. And then lastly, I think the most important thing is after you do this, right, everyone's going to go back to their desks. They're hopefully going to implement this. But what we see is even after a training, even after walking the product and addressing all concerns, other things will come up. Things that you didn't think about until you got in the product and your team got in the product and started using it. So it's important to have a follow-up meeting. This allows you to get everyone back together, maybe after like 2 weeks of testing it out. One, you can figure out who hasn't done it, right? So hold everyone accountable and say, we're going to check back in 2 weeks. If you haven't done this, we're going to revisit it. So it's going to keep everyone accountable. But two, if more questions do come up or concerns or problems, you can tackle them head on instead of them never being talked about and then them just rejecting the new process and technology. And we recommend you do this until you get full adoption across your team.
Right. I like it.
And
that's it.
That's it. That's the framework. So this is all highlighted in the thing we've shared with you, the firm automation playbook. Identify where you spend your time, right? Define what can and cannot be automated, and all these steps. We talked about the benefits, right? If you do this, it's going to save you time, improve work quality, drive profitability, and help you grow faster. Some things I want to mention, though, some best practices is start as soon as possible. A lot of firms, they wait till they feel like they need it, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's a lot harder. A lot of firms I talk to, they always regret and say they wish they started sooner, because if you have a team of 5 to 10 people, right, and you've all been doing it this way for the last 5 years, it's really hard to get someone to change the way they do something. But if you can start, when you're a solo or a smaller firm, that becomes part of your firm's DNA. When those new people come in, that's how they learn how to do the processes. That is the way they've always done it. It's a lot easier to train people as they come in versus to have them do something a certain way and say, hey, we're changing this. You're going to do it like this now. So start as soon as possible. Don't overthink it. Don't do analysis paralysis. And get the shiny object syndrome and try to look at everything in the market. Lean on your friends, like we talked about, and your colleagues or groups. Don't try to do it all at once. Break it out in bite-sized pieces. Makes it easier to learn, easier to digest, and then take the time and properly train your team. So let's talk a little about financial sense. So I want to talk about how we help a lot of firms automate important parts of their processes. Like I talked about, we're a workflow accounting practice management tool for accounting and bookkeeping firms. We help them automate their workflows, so save that time, track work, the status of it, make sure it's getting done, collaborate with your team, and really keep everything organized so your firm can get work done and hit its deadlines. But we have a lot of automation built in. Like I mentioned earlier, we help you collect client data so you don't have to chase down and remind your clients every week, every month to get that info so you can get your work done. Automate work creation. So if you're running on spreadsheets, recreating those spreadsheets and delegating that work and tracking that work every month or year can be a time-consuming process. They're cumbersome to maintain. Reminders for your team to keep them on track, to make sure nothing slips through the crack, and so much more. How's our time right now? So
we've gone 30 minutes. So we can go as long as you want. Y'all, if anyone's watching live, please chime in. And if you're watching later, ask questions in the you can comment on YouTube videos. So we will, follow up with those questions that you got. But yeah, you want to turn on Financial Sense a little bit. While he's bringing that up, I want to point, he taught us last week about checklists and how those are kind of a way to help automate as well. We have to think through exactly what you're doing, all the steps, and a lot of people raved about the download that was available just for free, just like a Google Sheet that you could get started with. But this is the inside of the platform.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I think we didn't talk about this in the firm automation playbook, but a great way to identify automation points too, or to kind of set your firm up for automation, is to first streamline your processes with checklists. Because if you standardize your process, it's a lot easier to automate because the points and how
you just start with one. Like if it's just the onboarding or the kickoff call or whatever, you could create something to be like, and here's a kickoff call, and then you'll feel like a hero, and then you'll do the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always about starting small. There's always going to be something you can improve. And I feel like it's really easy to just to keep looking for all the opportunities and create this great list, but sometimes it makes sense just to pick something and just to go with it and get that first one under your belt.
Well, what are some of the main automations that in financial sense that someone could do, like a favorite or two that and
Yeah,
someone new to a workflow solution like this could use?
I think our biggest automation favorite is the client tasks. So as we talked about earlier, a lot like we built this because so many firms we talk to were spending hours, every single one of their team members were spending hours every single week chasing down their clients for information, asking them, hey, can you send me that information so they can get their work done? A lot of the times we look at firms and the reason most of their work is overdue is because they're just waiting on their clients to get information. So it blocks them from doing their work, but also it wastes their time because they're sending the same client every single week, every single month, multiple emails to get this information. Um,
Yeah.
it's a time consuming process. So we built this to automate that process. So inside Financial Sense, you have your work. So this is my monthly bookkeeping work. You have your checklist for completing that work, right? But here you can go and create a checklist or request list for your client. So you
Mm.
can say, upload your credit card transactions, upload your bank transactions, review documents that I have attached. You can also send documents to them as well. And then if you go here to manage notifications, this is where the automation comes in, right? You say, okay, I want my automated notifications to start on, let's say, like the first of the month. And I want to remind the client every 5 days until they get their work done.
Mm.
So this
Oh
is
yeah.
automatically every month, because this is also a recurring project. Every month on August, September, October, November 1st, your client's going to get this request list. You never have to request the information again.
So let me just tell you, like this is similar for invoicing too, but this is the same. The amount of time I've spent overthinking whether I should send an email or how I should word an email or what for all these follow-ups, like emotionally that can take a toll. I mean, it takes a toll on me sometimes. I kind of believe that no one's really that different from a lot from a lot of people. And to have a software like do that for you, where there's when you get emails like that, you know that it's not, oh, Kate being a jerk or Kate being a pest. It's like she's just, this is a system. She's got a good business and she's
Mhm.
automated some stuff and then has just sent me a reminder. Like I think there's a lot of value in that, where you're not the bad guy, you're not the annoying one. It's just doing it for you. And not that financial sense is going to do it in an annoying way. It's taking that thinking out of it about, man, I have to write that person an email again. I bet they're tired of hearing from me. You don't even kind of know that they're going off, and you're doing those high value things instead of fretting about things. And I have a tendency to fret. So,
Yeah, no, which is true. Like even just like the mental drain of like trying to think of what to write, it can affect your morale if you're doing
yeah.
um, and that's what a lot of people like. We get that a lot. It's like people feel like even though it's like it's just light touches, but people are like, I don't have to pester my clients anymore. You know, and that's just nice to know that I don't have to do that. So like your client would receive something, right? That looks like. Let me go back to my emails. That looks like this, right? Or yeah, this would be it. So your client would get this simple email. It would show the firm, the request the work is related to, and then all the requests. Your client would then be able to easily access it. They could ask you questions. They could upload any documents you need, right? They could mark it completed and you would get notified. So not only is it automating the request, but it's giving them a secure place to upload that information instead of email. And it's organizing it all in one place on the work. As you can see now, as my team is working, they can go here, or as I'm working, right, I can go here and see that information I needed. So it's like it just magically appears and it's one click away instead of it being buried in your inbox somewhere or on some file that you can't remember where you stored it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of value to that in terms of just the automation, the organization. So probably our most popular feature over instead of just the general workflow and big automation. Another big one is the recurring. So you can set work to recur. So every month you do the same work, monthly bookkeeping for a client, payroll. A lot of firms, they're having to recreate those checklists every single month or reset them. It can be cumbersome to maintain, and then you have to redelegate it to your team members or hope that they're doing it. So one big one is you can set your work to recur. So every month it's going to create a new monthly bookkeeping project for my client Adeline Collins, or every two weeks for the payroll. So that's a big automation feature. Um, Another great one is, as you can see here, multiple people are involved in this process. What you can do is you can set dependencies where it automatically notifies the team member as the work changes hands. So as Mary finishes reconciling the accounts, your team member Shahram gets an automated notification saying, "Hey, Mary's finished her work. You can now begin your work and start reviewing it." So you don't have to depend on chasing down the people, messaging them in Slack.
Right.
Everyone's always in the loop. Um, so there's a lot of really great stuff. We built a product to really help firms get work done. So you as an owner, you have visibility into knowing where everything stands. Who's working on what? What's the status of work, right? Like in this view, when is it due? Am I hitting my deadlines? But also a lot of automation to help your team collaborate more efficiently, to get information and save you time without having to chase down clients, or just do a lot of that low admin work. So yeah, that's just a high level. There's a lot more to our system. If you're interested, just go check it out on the website. You can get a free demo. We have a free trial, so you can use all these amazing features for free for 14 days. We have time tracking. We even recently released an email integration, right? So you can manage your emails from FC and have a focused client pool. There's so much going on here, so many things you can use, but essentially we help your firm get work done and do it efficiently, so you guys can focus on taking on more clients, hitting your deadlines, and growing your firm.
This is great. Do we need to keep screen sharing? You going to go back to the presentation, or can we?
I'm done. So I was just going to say, if you want to start a free trial, go to financialsense.com. I
Perfect.
think there's a link below as
There's
well.
a link below. Yep, right next to the automation playbook as well. This has been really good. I appreciate the time. Like, it's just, I feel like you must have seen like a lot of this in action to be able to put it together so clearly, and to give us those bite-sized steps that we can actually do. So that playbook seems really great. I wrote down some of my takeaways are, not to do it all at once. And I liked that priority matrix too, because even that can be crippling. Like, so you make your list and you're like, okay, Shahram,
Yeah.
I did step 3 or whatever. And then you're like, but now which of these do I pick? And that matrix helps decide. We're prone to, if we don't want to do something, like if it's not our natural inclination, we're going to talk ourselves out of it. So that's a good
yeah.
framework to use.
Yeah. Guilty of that.
Awesome. Well, so if anyone watching now has any questions, feel free to put them in. Otherwise, Shahram is in our Facebook group. He's on the Financial Sense website. Like, if you use the website to contact Financial Sense, you'll be able to connect with someone at the firm too. I don't know if there's any other better way to connect with you or not that you want to say now.
Yeah, the website's
Shahram?
the best way. If you reach out to our support team, you can email me at shahram@financial-sense.com. My first name is tough to spell. There's a second name. It's silent.
A
But so
second
the
H
website,
that's silent. Yeah. But for those of y'all in the Facebook group, I know not everyone is. He's in there and active. So don't forget that September 15th will be our third session with him. We're hoping to talk about how to build a high performing remote firm. That's our working session for the next one. But keep coming back. We're hoping to make this like a good library of resources for folks over the rest of 2022. So, Shahram, thank you for being here. No questions are outstanding. So we'll wrap up and see you again in the Facebook group and on September 15th.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. This has been been great to do this, and I look forward to the next one. We got a lot of really great stuff to talk about.
Awesome. All right. Talk to y'all later. Have a good Wednesday afternoon, everybody.